You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Was it a perfect game? No, it was not perfect. I don't think Syracuse has played a single perfect game through 5 weeks, when that's understandable. But I think that was the best game that Syracuse football has played this season. And I'm going to tell you why, all right? I have 3 factors as to why I believe this was the best game that Syracuse has played this season. Number 1, the Orange on the road for the first time this year got off to a fast start. Especially on the road, it is imperative that you get off to a fast start. I know it was maybe more Syracuse fans in attendance, but for any UNLV fan that was there, they were pretty quiet for the first quarter of this game. It is imperative that the road team does that. Get the opposing fans and the noise, bring the energy just down a little, and, well, rile up your own fans. It's important to get off to a fast start. Syracuse was on defense at the beginning of this game. They forced a quick 3 and out. Then the Orange, they drive right down the field for a touchdown. It's 7-0. Then UNLV obviously gets the ball back. They get something a little bit going, but the drive stalls, in large part really because of themselves, kicking themselves in the foot, right? A holding penalty, a bad snap. Then on 3rd and 20, even if UNLV had converted it, there was a holding penalty that got declined. So either way, it was either going to be declined. It was either going to be a conversion, but taken it back because it would be 3rd and 30 due to a hold, or what happened, which is that Syracuse got the stop in the end. So the Orange forced another punt. And then what did we see on the next drive? Bing, bang, boom. Syracuse goes right down the field once again to take a 14-0 lead. And the best play on that drive was when Kyle McCord lining up under center. Very uncommon for this Syracuse offense when McCord lines up under center. A fake handoff to the running back. He finds an open Oronde Gadsden through the middle of the field, then cut it to the left sideline, and I believe he got 26 yards on the play. It was a perfect example of running the football sets up the pass, right? Because on the first drive of the game, McCord was under center for one play. He handed it off to LeQuint Allen. LeQuint Allen got no yards. It wasn't even a positive running play. But because Syracuse had already shown their hand that they will try to run the football, that's when it opens up the play action. Everyone got sucked in, and there's an open Oronde Gadsden, an All-American tight end, wide open over the middle of the field for a first down. So it's very important that you get off to a fast start on the road, and Syracuse football did that, and that's one of the reasons why I believe this was the best game that Syracuse football has played to start the season, which, by the way, we're almost at the midway point. We've played 5 games. Next game is the 6th, right? Which is going to be NC State on Saturday night. Number 2 of why I believe this was the best game for Syracuse was they took advantage of UNLV mistakes. Every time UNLV made a mistake, it felt like Syracuse capitalized on it. Remember that second drive of the game from UNLV, right? They were kicking themselves in the foot. A holding penalty creates a 2nd and 20. Then a bad snap creates a 3rd and 20. But still, it's one of those scenarios where, yeah, your opponent is screwing up. But when your opponent is screwing up, don't interrupt them, right? It's the classic money ball. They're screwing up. They're making errors left and right. Leave them alone. Keep letting them make errors. And that's what Syracuse was doing on that drive. We saw in the beginning of the second half when Syracuse took the lead 24-21, UNLV obviously gets the ball right back. And I think it was on the second play of that drive, Haj Malik Williams throws an interception. It was a little bit of a lucky bounce. It bounced right into Deuce Chestnut's chest. He didn't have a choice but to catch the football. But still, they get a turnover. And on the very first play after that turnover, that's when we saw Yasin Willis get his first career touchdown in college, a 26-yard rushing score. So that is an example of UNLV making a mistake, maybe getting a little bit of a lucky bounce, and making them pay, right? When your opponent is making mistakes, don't interrupt them and cash in on those opportunities you get. Jackson Woodard, He dropped a game-winning interception. Point blank. He dropped a game-winning interception. And my goodness, if he catches that ball, we're looking at this game in an entirely different light. I have to acknowledge that, because that would be 2 red zone interceptions for Kyle McCord, both in the fourth quarter. And it would have been one of the main reasons why Syracuse lost this game. But guess what? Woodard dropped the ball. He dropped it. And on the very next play, what does McCord do? He finds Jackson Meeks on a fade route for the game-tying touchdown. Once again, your opponent makes a mistake, they commit a penalty, they drop a pass, and you take advantage of it. That is the sign of a really good football team, when you can take advantage of opponents' mistakes. How often have we seen it with Syracuse being on the other end of that, where they would make a mistake and all of a sudden it's the other team that's capitalizing? And UNLV did some of that in this game. But we've seen it go drastically the other way against Syracuse. So it was nice and refreshing to see, for a change, the Orange capitalizing on their mistakes. They also punished UNLV for being way too conservative with the clock. Barry Odom, clock management. My goodness, you need to go play a game of Madden, man. That was pathetic clock management. Forget the first half for a second. The second half, Syracuse had all 3 timeouts. Time was not a problem on the game-winning touchdown drive. All right, they had all 3 timeouts. They had 3 minutes to go down the field. They were good on time, and they were moving very efficiently. So it was no problem. But Barry Odom decided to sit on his 3 timeouts, only have 23 seconds when they get the ball back, and they kneeled. They kneeled it. And they played for overtime for some reason. I don't know why. I think they could have had the Syracuse defense at the end of the game. Whatever. They made the mistake. Barry Odom made the mistake. And guess what? What happened in overtime? Syracuse won the game. See? Capitalizing on their mistakes. UNLV got a roughing the passer on 3rd and 20. 3 plays later, Syracuse wins. So one of the reasons why I believe that this was the best game that Syracuse played is because it seemed like every time UNLV made a mistake, the Orange capitalized on it. And opponents are going to make mistakes. So is our team's going to make mistakes too. You got to be able to take advantage of them. And that's what Syracuse did. And finally, why I believe this was the best game that Syracuse football played all season, they fought through adversity. They really did. There were multiple instances in this game they could have just rolled over, given up. They're going up against a ranked team on the road. It would be understandable if they lost. They're the underdogs, 6.5 points, right? It would have been like a quote-unquote acceptable loss by public perception. They could have just rolled over and quit, but that's not what they did. They did not quit. They kept going. They knew that they could win this game. Syracuse was up 14-0, and in a blink of an eye in the second quarter, it's 21-14 in large part, because UNLV tied the game, and then there was a block punt. And UNLV capitalized right after to make it 21-14. But guess what? No problem. Syracuse went down the field, kicked a field goal, went into halftime, got the ball back, then scored a touchdown. And just like that, without UNLV touching the ball, Syracuse goes back in front. In the third quarter, Syracuse led 31-21. It's looking pretty good. We're all excited. We're thinking, man, we're about to get a big win here. UNLV kicks a field goal. All right, 31-24. Now our offense is back on the field. They stall out. And another block punt. And this one was directly a touchdown because of the bounce that it took. It's 31-31. No panic. 31-31, fourth quarter. Syracuse drives right down the field. But oh my goodness, Kyle McCord threw an interception in the red zone. And on top of that, UNLV goes 94 yards. 94 yards to take the lead 38-31. Syracuse had 2:59 and 3 timeouts left. And they went down the field and they tied the game and then won in overtime. So they kept fighting through adversity. There were plenty of instances where, my goodness, this game could have gone south. but they found a way. They fought through the adversity. Yeah, they had 2 block punts. They still won. Do we need to correct the block punts? Do we need to correct the special teams? Absolutely. I'm not saying that we can get away with that going forward. But one of the reasons why I think this was the best game that Syracuse played this season is because they dealt with adversity. They were on the road against a ranked opponent, and they found a way to win. That is what good teams do. They find a way to win even when they're not necessarily on their A game. I think this trumps the Georgia Tech game because Georgia Tech, that was a home one. They were at home. Everyone was pulling for Syracuse for the most part. I think it's better than how they showed against Holy Cross, certainly better than Stanford, and I think it was better than Ohio as well. This was the best game that Syracuse football played all season long for 3 reasons. They got off to a fast start, they took advantage of UNLV mistakes, and they didn't panic when they dealt with adversity. So overall, just a fantastic performance by Syracuse. And yeah, we could have looked at this game a little bit differently if a bounce goes here or there. But the Orange found a way to win. That is what matters. 44-41 in overtime over UNLV. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out this stat that it's the first time since 2001 that Syracuse has 2 ranked victories in the regular season. And for what it's worth, Syracuse went 9-3 in the regular season in 2001 and got 10 wins overall. And what Fran Brown said in the post-game press conference is that Syracuse made one more play than UNLV. And that's exactly how I felt. So once again, I believe that this was the best game that Syracuse has played all season long. If you agree with me or disagree with me, leave a comment in the comments section below why I am right or why I am wrong.